I used to think family meant everything, that blood could bind us through anything. But I was wrong. It wasn't blood that mattered, it was trust. When I look back, I can see how naive I was. How blinded I had been by my own love for Emily, my younger sister. She was always the one I cared for the most. The one I would have given anything for. And for years, I did. I paid for her bills, covered her debts, supported her through every crisis, real or imagined. I told myself it was because family comes first. That was my excuse. But I know better now. I found out the hard way, when you give someone too much power over you, eventually they will use it to destroy you. The night I walked into her apartment, I was ready for the truth. The truth that I had been too scared to acknowledge for so long. I had already seen the signs, but I ignored them. The missed calls, the half-truths, the excuses. I told myself it was just a phase. But as I opened the door to her apartment, everything became crystal clear. The place was a mess, but it wasn't the kind of chaos I expected from a broke, struggling college student. No, this was the mess of someone who had been living beyond their means for far too long. I had paid her rent for months, no, years, $500 a month. It drained my savings, but I didn't mind. She was my sister, after all. But now I was standing there, staring at the wreckage of my own self-deception. There, on the coffee table, was a pile of unopened bills. I picked one up, and my heart sank when I saw the amount. She hadn't been paying anything. The money I'd sent for her rent, her bills, it had all been used for something else. I stormed into her bedroom. The bed was made, but there were receipts and credit card statements scattered across the floor. Designer clothing tags, the kind I couldn't afford, were shoved in the corner. And then there was the pair of shoes, a brand new pair, just sitting there like a reminder of everything I had sacrificed for her. My pulse raced. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about betrayal. I had been paying for her luxury life while I struggled to make ends meet. The apartment, the clothes, the dinners out, all funded by my blood, sweat, and tears. And the worst part? She hadn't just been lying about her financial struggles. She had been renting out the apartment I paid for. To strangers. Tourists. I couldn't believe it. The realization hit me like a freight train. I took a step back, staring at the empty space she had turned into a luxury Airbnb. She was making more money than I ever could have imagined, all while pretending to be the broke little sister I had to save. I wanted to scream. To lash out. But I knew it wouldn't help. I had to be smarter than this. I had to make her understand the consequences of what she had done. And so, I left. Without saying a word, I walked out of the apartment, leaving everything behind. The city of New York was alive, pulsing with energy, but it felt cold and distant. The anger inside me burned hotter than the city lights outside. I couldn't just let her get away with it. I couldn't go back to the apartment where we once lived. I drove aimlessly through the streets, unsure of what I was even looking for. I just needed to think. I needed a plan. It wasn't just the money. It wasn't just the apartment. It was everything. I had been a fool to believe in her. I couldn't let her get away with it. I spent the night at a coffee shop, my phone in hand, staring at the Airbnb listing she had set up for my apartment. It was still live. The photos she had posted, the descriptions of luxury and exclusivity, every word sickened me. But I didn't call her. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing I was upset. Instead, I took action. I canceled the payment. $2,500. Gone. Every month, without fail. No more. It felt good, in a strange way. But there was still something inside me that wasn't satisfied. She had to face the consequences. The next morning, the phone calls came. I ignored them. Every single one. And then she showed up at my work. She stood there, in front of my office building, waiting for me to leave. Her face twisted with anger, like she was expecting me to beg for her forgiveness. But I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I had already started the process of evicting her from the apartment. She wouldn't have a place to stay. She wouldn't have anything left. That afternoon, I drove to the landlord's office and signed the papers. The lease was officially cancelled. Her life, as she knew it, was over. And I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. As I walked out of the office, my phone buzzed. Emily had been trying to call again. I didn't answer. But later that night, I received a message. Where are you? The rent wasn't paid. Why are you doing this? I knew it was coming, but seeing it in writing made it feel all the more real. It wasn't just the apartment she was losing. It was everything. I blocked her number. I couldn't handle her anymore. That was the end. Days passed, but the weight of the situation didn't lift. I tried to distract myself with work, with the daily grind, but nothing felt the same anymore. I kept thinking about my sister, about the life I thought she was leading. It haunted me. I couldn't understand how she had been able to lie to my face for so long. I mean, how? How could she be so callous, so indifferent to the sacrifices I made for her? The truth was starting to feel like an overwhelming storm, a force I couldn't stop. The more I tried to push it away, the harder it became to breathe. I had severed ties with her, no phone calls, no messages. I kept telling myself that she didn't deserve my time, my energy. But then, she came to my apartment. I didn't know she knew where I lived. After everything, it should have been the last place she would show up. But there she was, standing at my door one evening, looking every bit like the same sister I once loved. Her face was pale, eyes red from crying. I hesitated for a moment. Part of me still wanted to open the door and embrace her, to pretend like none of this ever happened. But the other part, the stronger part, wanted to lock the door and leave her to deal with her consequences. And I knew I couldn't keep doing this. I opened the door. Her voice cracked when she spoke. Why, Lex? Why would you do this to me? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took a step back, allowing her to step inside. She was shaking, her breath uneven. Why, she asked again, her eyes now filled with anger. After everything I've done for you, after all this time, this is how you repay me? Repay her? My mind reeled. Repay her? Repay you? I found my voice. It was cold, controlled, but it shook with the emotion I hadn't allowed myself to feel until now. Repay you for what, Emily? For lying to me? For taking everything I gave you and using it to fund a lie? Her face softened for a split second, and I could see the guilt in her eyes. But it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. She opened her mouth to speak, but I stopped her. I've given you everything, Emily. Everything. You have no idea how hard it's been for me to make ends meet. But I still gave you what I had. I sacrificed everything for you. And now I realize it was all for nothing. She flinched as if my words physically hurt her, but she didn't move away. I had no choice, she said, the words tumbling out like she had rehearsed them 1,000 times. You wouldn't understand. I needed more than what you could give me. That was the final straw. I stepped closer to her, my voice barely above a whisper. No, you don't understand, Emily. You've always taken, and you never once thought about what I needed. I never asked for anything in return, but you lied to me. And you used me. That's something I can't forgive. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost felt guilty for being so harsh. She was my sister, after all. But then I remembered the weeks of frustration, the nights spent wondering how I had allowed myself to be tricked. I can't help you anymore, I said firmly. You have to face the consequences of your actions. She collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. The sound of her sobbing echoed through the room, but it didn't break me. It didn't soften my resolve. I couldn't let her drag me down any further. I've already started the eviction process, I continued. You won't be able to stay in the apartment anymore. It's over. She looked up at me, shock and disbelief in her eyes. You can't do this. I'll be out on the street, Lex. Please, don't do this. Her voice cracked with desperation, but I knew better than to give in. I didn't do this to you, Emily, I said. You did this to yourself. You made your bed, now you have to lie in it. I could see the rage building in her, but there was nothing left for her to say. She stood up suddenly, knocking over a chair in her haste. You think I don't know what you've done? You think I don't know you've been using me this whole time? You've been controlling me, telling me what to do, what to wear, how to live. Well, I'm not your puppet anymore. The words hit me like a slap to the face. I stood still, shocked by the anger in her voice, but there was no regret in my heart. That's not what this was about, Emily. I just wanted to help you. She laughed bitterly. Help me? By taking away everything I had left? Her voice was rising now, a mix of fury and sorrow. You don't get it, she spat. You think you're better than me, don't you? You think you're some kind of savior. But you're not. You're just a coward who's too afraid to let go. I could feel the weight of her words, but they didn't break me. Not anymore. Goodbye, Emily, I said, turning my back on her. I couldn't stay any longer, not with her poison in the air. But as I reached for the door, she called out to me. You'll regret this. I stopped for a moment, my hand on the door, and I almost turned back. But then I realized something, I wouldn't regret this. Not anymore. I opened the door and left, stepping into the cool night air, knowing that this was the end. There was no going back now. The following days were nothing like what I expected. I thought I would feel a sense of relief, a weight lifted from my shoulders. But all I felt was emptiness. The kind of emptiness that settles deep inside you when you realize a chapter in your life is truly over. I had made the decision to cut Emily out of my life. No more lies, no more excuses. But I couldn't deny the small part of me that still wondered if I could have done something differently. Could I have saved her? Could I have fixed things before they spiraled this far? No. I had to remind myself there was nothing left to fix. She had made her choices. And now I had to make mine. But it was harder than I thought. At night, I still found myself reaching for the phone, intending to send a message, but I stopped myself every time. She had taken so much from me. It wasn't about love anymore, it was about survival. Work became my refuge. I buried myself in deadlines, meetings, anything to distract from the constant replay of her last words in my head. The fight, her anger, the pain in her eyes, it never stopped. It gnawed at me, making every day feel like a battle I didn't know how to win. And then, one evening, I found myself standing at the front door of her apartment. I didn't know why I was there. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was some last-ditch attempt to reconcile something that didn't need reconciling. Or maybe I just wanted to see her one last time, to understand why. I stood there for a long while, staring at the door, before finally knocking. Seconds stretched into what felt like hours before I heard the sound of footsteps from inside. I didn't know what I expected, anger, tears, or maybe nothing at all. But when the door finally opened, it was Emily who stood there. Her face was different. Harder. The anger was gone, replaced by something darker. Something colder. You came, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what else to do. She stepped aside, allowing me to enter. The place was empty. Bare. Like she had started to pack up and leave, but hadn't finished. I didn't think you'd actually come back, she said quietly, her eyes never leaving mine. I looked around the room, my eyes falling on the empty boxes stacked in the corner. It felt like a goodbye, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't seen it before, but now it was all so clear. Emily was preparing to leave. But this wasn't about her leaving me. It was about me leaving her. I couldn't leave it like this, I said, my voice hoarse. I had to come and see for myself that you were okay. She let out a bitter laugh, one that held no humor. Okay? You think I'm okay? I didn't know how to answer that. All I could do was look at her, at the sister I once knew, and wonder what went wrong. She turned away, walking toward the small kitchen area, her back to me. You know, Lex, sometimes I think the hardest part about this whole thing wasn't the lies or the secrets, it was that you always saw me as some kind of project. Like I was this broken thing that needed fixing. And every time I messed up, you would swoop in, acting like the hero. You never once asked me what I needed, what I really wanted. The words hit me like a blow to the chest. You don't get it, Emily, I said, my voice rising in frustration. I wanted to help you. I didn't want to control you. I just wanted to see you succeed. To not be stuck in this cycle of destruction. I thought I was doing the right thing. She turned around, her eyes flashing with anger. And that's the problem, isn't it? You think you know what's best for me. You think you can fix everything just because you're older. But you can't fix me, Lex. You never could. No one can. Her words echoed in the room. I wanted to scream, to tell her she was wrong, that she was still my sister and I still cared. But then I realized I was no longer sure what we were anymore. There was a long silence between us, thick with the weight of everything left unsaid. I didn't know how to bridge the gap that had grown between us. I didn't even know if I wanted to. Is this it then? I finally asked, my voice almost too quiet. She didn't answer at first, but her expression softened. I don't know what else there is to say, Lex. I've messed up. You've tried to help, and I've pushed you away. But, maybe this is the end of it. I nodded slowly, the reality of it settling in. Goodbye, Lex. The words hung in the air, and I realized that this might really be the last time I saw her. I turned to leave, but then I heard her voice again, softer this time. Maybe one day, we'll both figure this out. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I stepped out of the apartment and closed the door behind me. And as I walked away, I knew that part of me would always wonder if I could have done more. But another part of me was already moving on. It was time to stop looking back. Time to stop waiting for a resolution that would never come. Sometimes, the hardest part is knowing when to let go. The days that followed were a blur. I threw myself into work even harder, trying to numb myself with deadlines and meetings. But no matter how much I kept myself occupied, there was this lingering feeling of loss, of something important slipping through my fingers. I thought I had made the right choice. In some ways, I knew it was the only choice. But that didn't stop the ache inside me, the small flicker of doubt that still whispered in my mind. Maybe it wasn't supposed to end this way. A few weeks passed, and the days started to stretch longer, quieter. The absence of Emily's chaotic presence in my life felt heavier than I had anticipated. I told myself it was for the best, that I needed time to heal, to rebuild. But with each passing day, I found myself wondering if the damage had been too much. Would things ever feel normal again? Would I ever feel whole again? Then came the night I didn't expect. I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring at my phone, half-heartedly scrolling through emails, when a message popped up. It wasn't from Emily. But it was someone I never thought I'd hear from again, Caitlin. Caitlin had been a friend of Emily's. I didn't know her well, but she was someone I had always respected. We'd crossed paths a few times, and I'd never seen her as anything more than a distant acquaintance. But now, after everything, seeing her name in my inbox was like a spark in the darkness. The message was simple, but its implications were immediate. Lex, I know you're probably still processing everything with Emily. But I need to tell you something important. Please, when you have the time, call me. My first instinct was to ignore it. I didn't want to get involved in any more drama. But something about the urgency in her message made me hesitate. Maybe it was a sign that I wasn't quite done with the past, or maybe it was curiosity. Either way, I couldn't ignore it. I dialed her number, unsure of what I was about to walk into. She answered after the first ring, her voice tense. Lex, thank you for calling. Caitlin, what's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear her trying to gather her thoughts before speaking. I don't know how to say this, but I think you need to know what happened. What really happened between Emily and that guy? The things she didn't tell you. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. What do you mean? What guy? I'm talking about Jason, Caitlin said. The guy she's been seeing for the past few months. I froze. Jason. That name sent a chill through me. I hadn't heard of him before. But I had a feeling, deep in my gut, that this wasn't good. Jason? I repeated. Who is he? What does he have to do with everything that's been going on? There was a long pause. Caitlin sighed heavily. Look, Lex, Emily's been involved with him for a while. But it wasn't just some casual thing. He's dangerous. He's been manipulating her, using her in ways that I don't even think she fully understands. I'm telling you this because I know Emily's not going to tell you. She's too deep in it. My mind was racing now. Jason. Manipulation. What was Caitlin talking about? I had seen the signs of Emily's destructive behavior, but this was a whole new level of danger I hadn't anticipated. Wait, are you saying she's in danger? I asked, my voice shaking. Caitlin's voice cracked slightly. Yes. But it's not just that. I don't think she even realizes what she's gotten herself into. I think she's been keeping it from you because she's ashamed, or maybe she doesn't want you to know how bad it's really gotten. I'm telling you this because I think you need to step in before it's too late. She's not going to listen to me. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. My first instinct was to storm over to Emily's apartment, to confront her and demand answers. But then the reality hit me, I had already done that. I had already tried to save her. But now, there was more to the story. And it wasn't just about me anymore. I don't know what to do, Caitlin, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. You have to talk to her, Caitlin urged. She won't listen to anyone else. But maybe you're the only one who can reach her now. Just make sure she knows she's not alone. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't been there for Emily in the way she needed me. I had been so focused on my own hurt, my own sense of betrayal, that I hadn't seen the bigger picture. Okay, I said finally. I'll talk to her. I'll make sure she knows. We hung up, and for a few moments, I just sat there in stunned silence. Caitlin's words echoed in my mind: danger, manipulation, she's not alone. I didn't know what I was walking into, but one thing was certain, I wasn't going to walk away this time. The next morning, I found myself standing outside Emily's door once more. But this time, I wasn't here to say goodbye. I was here to help her, if she would let me. I knocked, and the seconds felt like years as I waited for her to answer. When she finally opened the door, I could see it in her eyes, the exhaustion, the defeat. But there was also something else. A flicker of hope. I know what's going on, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Emily looked at me, her face a mix of surprise and guarded fear. You don't have to hide from me anymore, I continued. I know about Jason. I know what he's been doing to you. Her expression faltered for a moment, before she stepped back, allowing me inside. And this time, we were both ready to face the truth. The air between us felt thick with unsaid words as I stepped into Emily's apartment. She closed the door behind me, and for a brief moment, neither of us moved, the tension palpable in the space between us. I could feel her eyes on me, searching my face for signs of judgment or anger, but all I could muster was concern. My heart was heavy as I watched her, wondering just how deep this dangerous web had pulled her in. She had been through so much, and yet, all I could think about was how she had still managed to shield me from this side of her life, probably to protect me. But now, there was no escaping the truth. I never wanted you to find out like this. Emily's voice broke through the silence, sounding strained, almost brittle. I didn't want you to think I was weak. I didn't know what to say to that. I wanted to tell her that she wasn't weak, that we all make mistakes. But I couldn't lie. She was weak, but not in the way she thought. It wasn't weakness that had caused her to fall for Jason's manipulation. It was vulnerability, a need for someone to make her feel wanted, important. Emily, you're not weak, I finally said, my voice soft but firm. But you need to understand, Jason, he's not good for you. Caitlin told me everything, and I think you've been hiding from the truth. She turned away from me, her shoulders slumped as she took a few steps toward the window. I could see how her body stiffened, how every part of her screamed for some sort of escape, some way out of the conversation she clearly didn't want to have. But it had to happen. She had to face what was going on before it consumed her completely. I'm not hiding from the truth, Emily replied, though her voice lacked conviction. I just don't know what to do anymore, Lex. I thought he cared for me. I thought, her words faltered, and she let out a frustrated sigh. I don't know what's real anymore. It was painful to watch her like this. The girl I once knew, so full of energy and hope, was now a shell of herself, crumbling under the weight of something she couldn't escape. The realization that Jason had manipulated her, controlled her in ways that went beyond what she even understood, was too much to bear. I could see the cracks in her once unshakable confidence, and my heart ached for her. You need to let go of him, Emily, I said firmly, taking a step toward her. This isn't love. He's using you. He's controlling you, and you're not seeing it because he's feeding you lies. She whipped around to face me then, her eyes flashing with emotion. I don't need you to tell me what I can and can't see, Lex. Her voice shook with a mix of anger and hurt. I know you think I'm stupid, that I should have known better. But I didn't, okay? I was looking for something, anything, to fill the emptiness inside me, and he made me believe I could have that. I didn't know how to respond to that. Her pain was so raw, so genuine, and yet the person she trusted most had taken advantage of it. Jason had preyed on her loneliness, her need for validation, and twisted her into someone she barely recognized. I don't think you're stupid, I said, my voice softer now. I just want you to realize that you deserve more than this. You deserve someone who treats you with respect, who doesn't use you to get what they want. Emily's expression softened as she seemed to process my words. The anger in her eyes dimmed, replaced with something closer to resignation. I want to believe you, Lex. I really do, she whispered. But I'm scared. I'm scared of being alone again. Scared of losing him, even if I know deep down it's toxic. I took another step toward her, placing my hand gently on her shoulder. You're not alone, Emily. You have me. And you have Caitlin. You have people who care about you, people who won't use you for their own gain. There was a long pause before she finally spoke again, her voice barely audible. What if I can't get out? What if it's too late? My heart ached for her as I looked at her. It was clear she felt trapped, suffocated by the hold Jason had on her. But I knew that she was stronger than she realized. And I wasn't about to let her spiral down that path any further. You can get out, Emily. You're stronger than you think. I'm here for you. Caitlin is here for you, I repeated, my tone unwavering. We won't let you fall. But you have to make the choice. You have to choose to walk away from him, or this will never stop. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see the internal battle raging inside her. I could see the doubt, the fear, but also something else, a flicker of hope, however small it was. Finally, she nodded. It wasn't a confident gesture, but it was something. Okay, she said quietly. I'll do it. I'll break up with him. I'll find a way out. My heart soared with relief. This was the first step. She was finally acknowledging the truth, and that was everything. Good, I said, giving her a small, reassuring smile. We'll do it together. You don't have to face this alone. For the first time in weeks, I saw a glimmer of light in her eyes. It wasn't the full confidence she used to have, but it was a start. And it was all I needed. We sat down on the couch, and for the first time in what felt like forever, we just talked. Not about Jason or the pain he had caused, but about the future, about what Emily wanted now that she was starting to take control of her own life again. We made plans to meet Caitlin, to reach out to other people who could help her get back on track. Emily wasn't going to face this alone anymore. As I sat there beside her, watching the first glimmer of hope begin to return to her eyes, I knew that this was only the beginning of her journey. There would be setbacks, no doubt. The road ahead would be difficult. But she wasn't alone anymore. Not while I was here. And that, in itself, was enough to make all the difference.